Hey, welcome in. Well, everybody's seen that image of Bernie Sanders sitting there at the inauguration with his puffy coat on and his mittens. And if you thought there was something malevolent about those mittens, you were right. Because it turns out those mittens are white supremacy. They are literally pure, unadulterated white supremacy. There's no telling the kind of harm that those mittens have done. I mean, how old are those mittens? Did they exist, I don't know, maybe in the 30s, maybe in Germany? Who knows? I mean, but I'm sure we can all just agree that those mittens are evil, right? Well, here we have the headlines from the Daily Wire. Just going to interrupt for 1 second to say, if you like this content, subscribe so you can see more. Thanks a lot. Leftist writer, Bernie Sanders' mittens are a sign of white supremacy. That's right. So if you were worried about those mittens, you were right to be worried. They're definitely a sign of white supremacy. What does it say here? It says, even avowed socialist Senator Bernie Sanders is not immune from claims that he represents white privilege and perpetuates white supremacy, despite his progressive bona fides. That's because it's never enough. And that's because no matter what you do, they always know the answer before they've heard the question. And the answer is white supremacy. And Bernie's not immune from this. And the person who wrote this was a professor from, where else? University of California, Berkeley. And she wrote an op-ed for the San Francisco Chronicle. The San Francisco Chronicle is a major newspaper, with a very large distribution. But, it's amazing. There seems to be no end of the insanity that we see coming out of mainstream press. But anyway, she wrote, this professor, that Sanders' decision to show up at President Joe Biden's swearing-in ceremony in a standard parka coat, dress slacks, and a pair of oversized sweater print mittens, an ensemble that launched 1 million memes, is emblematic of the Vermont senator's inability to connect with minorities. Now, again, there's no way that he could have dressed where he wouldn't have been white supremacy, where his mittens wouldn't have been. If he dressed up in a $10,000 suit, that would have been it as well. There's no way to win. There's just a grievance industry now that must be fed. And it doesn't matter who you are or how communist you are, as Bernie Sanders is finding out. Quote, we've been studying diversity and discrimination in the United States. My students were ready. What did they see? They saw a white man of all things. Oh my goodness. In a puffy jacket and huge mittens, distant not only in his social distancing, but in his demeanor and attire. He's just sitting there. This is, okay. Anyway, a University of California, Berkeley professor Ingrid Sayer-Ochi wrote, and the thing is that we see again and again with these types of very far leftist, postmodernist professors is that because there's no objective reality, they just shape everything to fit into the narrow bandwidth of their ideology. And the narrow bandwidth of their ideology says that everything is racist, everything is white supremacy, it's an insane worldview. As illustrated here. Quote, a wealthy, incredibly well-educated, and privileged white man, again, he's a white man. I mean, there's just no defense. Showing up for perhaps the most important ritual of the decade in a puffy jacket and huge mittens. Again, there is nothing he could have worn that she wouldn't have picked on. Because again, the problem is not his ideology. It's not what he's wearing. It's none of that. It's that he's a white man. And that's all that these professors can see. I mean, whether they believe it or not themselves, I don't know. I mean, again, it's kind of just a grievance industry at this point. Or, maybe it's just, cruel people doing what cruel people do, which is take advantage of other people when they have the advantage. Because she's not going to get any, people like me will make videos making fun of her. But in terms of, job security, she's secure. Saying things like this helps her job security. It's literally the least courageous thing she can say. And if she enjoys just saying awful racist things, well, it's a win-win for her, right? Anyway, they say here in the article that in his defense, Bernie's defense, he shows up at every event at the same thing anyway. He always looks the same. He's a socialist. I mean, he has to dress like that for his cred. And also, to be fair to Bernie here, he's also reportedly responsible for starting a high fashion trend, quote, grumpy chic, and by selling his own meme merchandise, and has raised nearly $2 million for the underprivileged in Vermont. So, good on Bernie for that, right? And having a sense of humor. But what we see again and again with these modern leftist professors and politicians and journalists is that they don't have a sense of humor. She thought that Sanders' appearance was an insult. Again, there's nothing he could have done that would have pleased her. And while she draws a distinction between Sanders and the rioters who attacked the United States Capitol on January 6th, it's a distinction, she says, without a difference. So here she puts forward the lie is that it was a white supremacist insurrection, which is just very silly. You could call it a QAnon shaman insurrection. I mean, that guy was there. But, we just keep seeing this hysterical framing of that event. But anyway, Senator Sanders is no white supremacist insurrectionist, she wrote. Okay, so she's not completely insane. I quote, but he manifests privilege, white privilege, male privilege, and class privilege in ways that my students could see and feel. So that sounds rigorous, doesn't it? In ways that they could see and feel. What does that mean exactly? Manifests privilege. He manifests privilege. What does this mean? Is this rigorous scholarship here? Is that like it's oozing out of him? And, she could just feel it in the air, in the atmosphere? Does he create like an ether of privilege around himself? This is all just pure nonsense. Again, this is a professor. This is somebody who's... How do these people con their way into being able to... How have they managed to con their way into being able to teaching young people? It seems that they're making it up as they go along. They're just fitting everything into the answer that they already know before they've heard the question. And anyway, let's end this off. She says Bernie needs to try harder. Quote, when you see privilege, you know it, she wrote. This is a professor. That does not sound rigorous to me. This sounds like she's just making it up. What do you mean, when you see it, you know it? What does that mean exactly? How are you a professor of anything? I swear to God, if these people were teaching pottery class, okay, they would say that clay is white supremacy. If they were teaching a swimming class, they'd tell you that air is privilege. And again, this isn't just like some random blog. This was from the San Francisco Chronicle, for God's sakes. Anyway, that's all I got to say about that. Please subscribe, like, and share. That really helps me out. If you just like to listen, there's the podcast, Radio Baloney. It's on pretty much every platform. You'll find it if you look for it. Thanks a lot. I'll see you next time.